Hey, what's up, witches? Today, I want to talk to you about a little bit of a more personal topic that's just kind of been on my mind a lot recently, just with struggles that I'm going through in my own personal life. And I really wanted to sit down and talk to you about what I have learned from going through it all. In particular, I want to talk about my experiences in working with Freya and with Hel in my own, just self growth and shadow work. So let's get into it. So, one of the biggest things that I personally have learned from working with Freya is self advocacy and setting personal boundaries for my own well being. As someone who is, just a really empathetic and maybe empathic person in general, one thing that Freya has really helped me with recently, just in the couple years that I have been working with her, is not just with setting boundaries with people, like even people that I like and that I love, like friends and family, just learning that it's okay to set boundaries for myself and my own well being, and also just learning how to be more discerning with who I do expend my time, energy, and effort on. Another big thing that I have come to learn about myself recently and just about people in general, especially people like me who suffer from anxiety or just a lifetime of people pleasing habits, these ideas of the base reactions that people have, that like the adrenaline response in humans. We always hear about these concepts of fight or flight, but the reality is that there are two other counterparts to fight or flight, and those are freeze and fawn. And those two in particular are the ones that I find myself turning to as coping mechanisms, and with fawning in particular is a big one that people pleasers such as myself will use. Fawning is this idea of basically trying to people please your way out of a situation or a conflict. If there's one thing that I have learned, particularly just in my adult life, and not even dealing with like big conflicts or life or death situations, but just dealing with disagreements, work conflicts, or just dealing with people who may not have our best interest in part, and be either looking out for themselves or actively trying to use, manipulate, and exploit us, it's really not useful to always be automatically going into this fawn response, because it's this idea of maybe if I just make myself small and submissive enough and roll over and I'm somehow able to placate everyone, I'll be able to feel safe or loved, or even just liked, or I'll be able to just get out of this tense situation that I'm currently in. The reality is that you can't people please your way out of every situation in life. If we're talking about survival instincts, you can't fawn over a beast that wants to eat your face in the hopes that somehow, if you're nice enough to it, it won't eat you. At some point, you have to learn to stand up and fight for yourself, or you're just gonna keep being used and abused and taken advantage of by others. So there's one thing that I especially have had to learn with that, and it's that it's okay to not just stand up for myself, but it's also okay to get angry on my own behalf. Women especially, I have found, are taught to people please from an early age and to put others' needs before our own, and especially to ignore or tamp down our anger to be able to get along in society. From an early age, we're told to hide or ignore our anger or our disappointment with others. We don't want to rock the boat. We need to be compliant or be a good girl. We don't want to cause a scene or express negative emotions, because otherwise we risk putting others off, making ourselves unlikable, or worse, coming across as the bitch. It's okay and sometimes healthy to be able to express disappointment and anger just in general or with others. even if it's just by not acting according to others' expectations of us. It's okay to reject those expectations and risk people being disappointed in us or not liking us if it means putting our own well-being first and making ourselves happy. Something that I've really struggled with is this concept of anytime I'm not putting someone else's needs, wants, or feelings first or before my own, I'm being selfish. And I still really struggle with those feelings of guilt and selfishness just by telling someone no, even if it's like, no, I don't feel up to this social function, or no, I don't feel comfortable with taking on this work task. Even if it's, I know in the back of my head logically that I am not going to be disappointing others or coming off as a bad friend, a bad employee, a bad daughter, whatever the case may be. It's still just so socially ingrained in us, and I think in women and girls in particular, that now that I'm well into my 30s and struggling with these concepts of self-actualization, it's hard to reject and put aside those feelings. But I've also learned that you'll never be able to be your most authentic self if you can never really express those authentic needs and wants to others. And that realization definitely hit me like a ton of bricks, because throughout my whole life, not only have I been a people pleaser, but as someone who has kind of moved around a lot and been the new kid at school my whole life, I also just always wanted to fit in or be liked so I could have friends. And now that I'm into adulthood, I realize, well, shit, is the reason why I don't have any authentic friendships because I never felt like I could be my authentic self with people, and then I'm lonely and angry and resentful about it, when really it's that I wasn't putting my true self forward this whole time. So how would I be able to attract other authentic or similar people to me? And so really my shadow work journey in a nutshell with both Freya and Hel has just involved overcoming a lifetime of people-pleasing tendencies and being whoever I thought I needed to be to other people in order to be accepted, liked, or just to avoid conflict. And so I've noticed that especially in coming up against these same scenarios, or just getting stuck in these ruts, or finding myself in these same repeating patterns over and over and over again and feeling unable to break out of them, I was starting to feel really angry and resentful about it. Mostly anger at myself. I mean, not only are women and girls also primarily taught that since we can't express anger and disappointment, we tend to turn inwards on ourselves. So I was feeling angry at myself for basically putting myself in this position of being a people pleaser and a doormat and constantly landing myself in these situations of being taken advantage of, because I was always falling back into this old automatic response of fawn my way out of the issue, people please my way out of the issue. Sadly, in reality, you can't do that. You can't make everyone happy at the end of the day. And so I just constantly felt myself stuck in these repeating patterns and being taken advantage of because I had no boundaries and I had no clear sense of self. So I was feeling tied down and restricted by chains of my own making in a way. If others have been used to relying on our compliance, especially if it benefits them in some way, not only will you feel this imposed sense of guilt or selfishness just by setting healthy boundaries with people, you might notice that when you start doing it, you will get this pushback from others just from setting boundaries where you didn't have any before. But really, we need to hang on to those things in order to protect ourselves. The other big point that I really wanted to get across to you guys in this video, and the big thing that I learned from Freya from dealing with all of these feelings and going through all of this, especially as someone who is very caring and compassionate and always putting others before myself and putting myself in others' shoes, but then feeling like those things were never being reciprocated, or at least not being reciprocated in the ways that I felt I wanted and needed, or to the extent that I felt I wanted and needed, or or to the extent that I felt I was going to for other people. Freya has definitely taught me that at the end of the day, you are what you need. And by that, not only do I mean that, sadly, most people I found are not like me. They are not people pleasers who were taught to constantly put others before themselves. Most other people are going through life thinking about themselves and their own needs and putting themselves first. Given the choice between you or themselves, they're always going to choose themselves. Going along with that, it's okay to be selfish. At the end of the day, as long as you're sure of who you are and your truth and your intentions, let others think what they will about you. Let them be wrong about you. You don't need to correct their opinions. Just live in your truth and know that even if others aren't there for you or able to be there for you in the ways that you need, you are all you need. So on the flip side of this coin, and talking about strength and self-advocacy and boundary setting and harnessing that sense of righteous anger on our own behalves, we get into the shadow work side of things and my work with Hel. So I've probably mentioned this in at least one of my videos before, but one thing that kind of stunned me when getting into working with the Norse gods and Freya in particular, and which basically helped to confirm, at least for my own personal satisfaction, that these deities were real and do interact with us, and that it wasn't just all my own imagination or all in my own head, was when I did start to really delve into this self-exploration and this shadow work. Freya basically turned me over to Hel and put me in the care of Hel when going through these things. With Hel and working with her, she really helped me in the aspects of healing the shadow self, learning to reparent my inner child, and reintegrate that shadow self that we often cast aside or cut away from ourselves or repress in order to feel loved or accepted by others. Not only that, she helps us to learn to see behind the masks of others and to recognize our own. Because often I have found that other people will project their own fears and shadows onto us to avoid facing it within themselves. Too often I've noticed that people will try unknowingly or knowingly to drag us into their nets. And maybe this is just something that I've struggled with my whole life as someone who is an empath and feels not only my own feelings, but feels the feelings of others very strongly. I've often just feel this sense sometimes of others trying to drag us into their nets to experience our thoughts and their feelings with them, whether they're doing this unconsciously or deliberately. And if, like me, you're a caring and empathetic person, you just might be more prone to getting caught up in the emotions and problems of others. Our instinct, or my instinct, is to fawn, to placate, to help fix. Maybe if I make everyone else around me happy, I'll be happy. It's not how it works. In some cases, if these people are aware of what they're doing, they may even use this as a manipulation tactic or just seek out people that they know might be more vulnerable or compliant to these things because they need someone else to blame for their own fears and their own problems and issues, because the issue or the source of their problems cannot be them. They're either unable or unwilling to face their own shadows and their own flaws as a person, so they're just constantly projecting them onto others. Or maybe it's not necessarily coming from a negative place, but they're just kind of looking for someone to sympathize or share in their feelings or share in their mindset. Consciously or not, they kind of expect you to agree with them and by an extent comply with what they want, what they want from other people, what they want from us, or just to validate them and their thoughts and feelings and emotions. They just kind of naturally expect that other people will share in their viewpoints and their concerns, when in reality, or at least from our perspective, their fears and concerns might not be as big of a deal or as serious as they seem to think or as they want us to think. It really taught me that at the end of the day, don't sacrifice your own well-being for other people's hang-ups or problems. Don't get me wrong. If a friend asks you for help, you help them. But I've learned to kind of take a step back from things, look at situations more objectively instead of just getting sucked in and like whisked away on the whirlwind of others' emotions. Both Freya and Hel have kind of taught me to see behind the masks of others and try to gain a more like objective perspective on things so that I can view scenarios and situations without getting swept away or caught up in the moment. Just because someone else thinks that there is an issue or a problem or that you should be focused on something, it doesn't mean that you have to agree or get sucked into it or view it the same way. This in particular I have noticed not just in my workplace, but in a lot of modern day workplaces and just with modern day society and like that concept of hustle culture in general, where it's led into this toxic environment I'm calling urgency culture. People almost want you to be in this high stress survival mode, and it leads to this subtle, insidious power dynamic that we can see on both a macro and a micro level on society and in just personal day-to-day interactions, where we are kept so preoccupied with this fear of and focused on what we think are supposed to be these big serious issues or these unknown repercussions from not focusing on what they are saying are these big serious issues, that you can't even take the time to step back and question if these fears are even valid in the first place. We're so caught up in what's being blared at us 24/7 as this sense of urgency, or look over there, focus on this issue, pay no attention to the man behind the curtains. Yeah, we can't even take the time to extract ourselves and say, is this even something I should be concerned about? Is this an issue I really need to be focusing all of my time, attention, effort, and energy on? Or does someone just want me to think that way so that I won't stop to question the bigger picture or the validity of their statements at all? So, in conclusion, at the end of this rant, don't set yourself on fire to keep others warm. Don't fall for their hype. Don't fall prey to the fear tactics. Stop and ask yourself, where is this person's perspective coming from? And what might they hope to achieve or accomplish by trying to make you feel rushed or stressed or sweating over the small things? Maintain your own objectivity, put your own mental health and your own well-being first, see the bigger picture, and reject urgency culture. Until next time, stay classy, pagans.